first of all, a belated happy birthday for your 80th birthday, which was a couple of weeks ago. How did you celebrate it in lockdown?
Well, the first thing we had to do was change all our plans, of course. We had plans for a pretty big party here in Los Angeles, and we had a lovely space booked and everything. It had been booked for nearly a year. But then it had to go to the wall, and instead, my wife and I had a lunch in a very nice outdoor restaurant here in Los Angeles, and the nearest table with people having lunch was 20 feet away, so I thought, and being outdoors, we were reasonably safe. And then in the evening, I invited all my senior colleagues from Star Trek: The Next Generation. And in fact, only 5 of them could come, and they came with their partners. And we had a very safe, very secure, very socially distanced evening outside. And that's one of the nice things, of course, about being in California. You can do almost everything outside.
Well, let's talk about Star Trek Picard for a second, because the first series was incredibly successful. Has the second series been affected by COVID?
Oh, yes. We should have started shooting it 3 weeks ago. I have sitting here on my desk 4 scripts. The first 4 scripts, all still being worked on, of course, now. And we are hopeful that we will go into production in the fall, in the autumn at some point. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed for that. I'm ready to go back to work.
In the meantime, you've been keeping yourself busy with your Twitter sonnets, hashtag a sonnet a day. I think from my calculation, you've done 95. Are you going to do all 154?
Oh, yes, yes. It won't be all of them, because I'm a little uncomfortable, and I may correct this when we get to the end of when we get to 154, because I did pass over 2 that I found so difficult, so challenging, difficult to understand and difficult to speak. And so I said to my watchers, listeners, look, I'm just going to skip over these because I don't know how to do them. But I'm a little embarrassed about that. I should have worked at it harder. And so I might go back with them towards the end. And of course, I am thinking of inviting guests from time to time to give us a sonnet.
Have you got a favorite?
A favorite sonnet? Yes, I do have a favorite sonnet. 16 is one of my favorite sonnets.
Talking Shakespeare, next Monday, you will be doing that online session. What do you hope that the participants and the viewers will get out of it?
Well, clearly, it's very important that the public's interest in Shakespeare and in everything that the Royal Shakespeare Company does, because the company, like so many other places, is finding the times very difficult. They have, 4 theatres, and they're all shut down. Everyone is coming up with interesting ideas of how can we communicate plays, how can we share plays with an audience, and most of it, of course, involves something like what you and I are doing right now. And my fear would be that if there is no Shakespeare for a significant amount of time, people's interests will just go elsewhere. And one of the great things about working with the Royal Shakespeare Company, and I've done it on and off for about 18 years, is that they have a worldwide audience, and a passionate audience too, who come from every corner of the globe to listen to Shakespeare being performed in Stratford-on-Avon by the Royal Shakespeare Company. And that has always given me a great deal of satisfaction. In the days when I was a company member but had never worked in Hollywood, I had little ambition for that at all. But now that Hollywood has become a second home for me, I know that it's become even more important than ever that I keep my connections with Shakespeare open, which is why when my wife Sunny had this wonderful idea of the sonnets, I just read one to her. Actually, I didn't read it. It was 16 that I had in my head, and I spoke it to her. And she said, "That's terrific. Listen, why don't we record it and then you post it somewhere?" And I said, "Well, I mean, who's going to be interested in me reading sonnets? I don't know." Anyway, I did. And the response was extraordinary. We were totally unprepared for it. The enthusiasm, the numbers of people that tuned into it was so big. And as I've been quoted as having said, I thought of something my mother used to say when I was very small. When she would cut up fruit for me, she would say, "An apple a day keeps the doctor away." She always said it. And I thought, a sonnet a day, blah, 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 blah. And that was my idea, to attach that to this. And there are 154 sonnets. And when I add the 2 that I dropped early on, I hope that I shall complete the whole canon of sonnets. My wife has an idea for what I should do when I've done that. So,
well, I mean, you've been at the RSC since 1966, so I'm told. I mean, presumably you remember your first production and your first role?
Well, I do vividly. My first production and role was Henry IV Part 1, a revival of the previous season. This was part of what had been Peter Hall's and John Barton's Wars of the Roses productions, when they did all the Henry VIs as well. But in fact, the first time I appeared on stage representing the RSC was in a reading organized by the great director Peter Brook of a dramatic account of the experiences of people who had been in concentration camps in Germany during the war and at the end of the war. A very powerful piece of writing. And that was actually the first time that I appeared under the banner of the RSC. But Henry IV Part 1, Henry IV Part 2, Hamlet with David Warner, which is something I'm very proud of having been in. And ultimately, at the very end of that first season, by which time I was hooked. I mean, the talons of Shakespeare and the Royal Shakespeare Company had got a grip on me. And I knew that there was nowhere else in the world I wanted to be. And I had a feeling that they were going to let me go at the end of that first season. And it was Peter Hall's custom, when he was artistic director, that rather like the headmaster at the end of a school year, he would call one at a time every member of the company to his office for a private meeting. And I was pretty certain that mine would be, "Well, thanks, Patrick. It's been a great season, but I don't think we'll have anything for you next year." Instead, I walked in and he said, "Well, this is not going to take very long," which of course didn't calm me at all. He said, "You know, we have 3-year contracts here, and we'd like to offer you a 3-year contract and make you an associate artist of the company." And I was overwhelmed.
Most people know you through TV and films, but do you, coronavirus aside, of course, do you still yearn to be on a stage?
Not as much as I did. And that's entirely due to how I feel about my body. I am 80 and I want to go. There are plenty of roles in Shakespeare I haven't played, and some that I would quite like to return to. But I'm no longer in that place where at the beginning of my time with the RSC, I could do an 8-9 hour rehearsal day and then do a 3-4 hour performance in the evening. I could probably do that 3 or 4 times a week, but I don't think I could do it as I used to do it 6 times a week and 8 performances. So it's going to have to be a consideration now. And but there are plenty of opportunities and plenty of companies and locations where one can do, you know, short runs of usually of rather unusual and rare pieces of work, and that's what I'm hoping to do. I do have plans for a one-man show inspired by my pal Sir Ian McKellen, who has done, I think, 2 one-man shows. I feel that I should join him and put together a piece about my experiences of being an actor and, like Ian, drive around the country for a few months.
Life with music. It's about somebody who has stage fright.
It was a wonderful experience. I got to play the piano.
I was going to say, do you play or not?
Not a note.
No.
But I spent 4 months preparing for this, working with piano teachers, working with performers. I even had a long conversation with Emmanuel Axe, who I'm proud to say is a very dear friend. And I had lunch with John Lill, great British musician, and they all talked with me about playing the piano. And then I worked with piano teachers, and I loved every single moment of it because I was not having to play any notes. I was having to look as if I was playing all those notes. I mean, I shouldn't be telling you all this because people will be thinking, yeah, he can't play the piano. But actually, I'm very proud of how it looks. I am convinced, and pianists have told me that they too were convinced that I was playing. But
the next time you go to a dinner party and somebody says, Patrick, give us a tune, then no chance.
Well, you know, I do have a piano which has one of those recording systems on it. I have a baby grand piano. And at parties, I used to go and sit round behind it and very surreptitiously press a couple of buttons, and then the music would start. And I would begin to play. And it always happened that the party would quiet down and someone would say, Patrick, I didn't know you played the piano, because they had no idea it was the piano that was playing. It wasn't me at all. But then I would get found out. It was always a good laugh.
Well, listen, thank you so much for your time. I know you're going to go off and do your daily sonnet. So thank you for your time, and see you soon.
I hope so. It was a pleasure talking to you, Andy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.